Mr. Ramdas Iyer, our senior scientist here.
Oscar.
Namaskar, sir. So, still 2:52, we have given 3 o'clock time. So,
No problem.
we can interact with each other, sir.
So, you are with which university, sir?
Delhi University Botany Department.
Okay. Department of Botany.
Yeah.
I think one madam, Dr. Kaul, Monica Kaul, she's in Hansraj.
Yeah.
She knows you very well. Maybe she'll be
She
attending.
used to be one of our colleagues' student,
Yes,
Professor
yes.
A.K. Bhatnagar. She also worked on the environmental issues. She is a coordinator with the Vigyan Prasar.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
We invited her for World Environment Day program.
Okay.
And she will be joining you also for this lecture.
Okay.
We had a long association with Botany Department, long back. Professor
I
Mohan
know
Ram.
it.
Professor Mohan Ram was our executive committee chairman.
Okay.
So that was about 25 years back. 25 years back.
1990 to 95. So.
He was the head of Botany Department.
Yeah, I completed my tenure in June
Okay.
as head of the department.
Okay. I think people have started coming on YouTube. So we can start the lecture. नहीं तो 3 बजे बोला.
3 बजे तो 3 बजे करते हैं ना. If you with your
We
permission, we'll
start
wait.
at 3, no issue.
Because people are still joining. Let them all join.
Yeah, let them join first.
Yes, yes.
कितने आ गए? पता नहीं ये देखा.
कर रहे हैं तो जॉइन स्टार्ट.
अच्छा इसमें सर ही बोलेंगे तो थोड़ा पढ़ देंगे सर आप.
नहीं इंट्रोडक्शन
में सर के बुला देता हूँ. पहले मैं बोल के सर को बुलाता हूँ. फिर सर वेलकम एड्रेस देंगे. Then you will introduce the chief guest and then we'll start.
Social well-being.
ये डायरेक्टर डाल दिया.
क्या?
मॉडर्न मीडिया ऑफिसर.
मैं तो नहीं यूज.
इस बार का थीम जो है साइंस. We have opened after about 7 months. For 7 months the museum was locked.
Last Chandrak.
It seems you have travelled, extensively in Uttarakhand also, sir.
Yeah, my major career is in Uttarakhand headquarters, but our work is entire Himalayan region.
Okay.
My PhD is also from the Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. I worked on the bamboo ecology there with Professor P.S. Ramakrishnan.
In Almora, there is a very good institute, Himalayan Govind Ballabh Pant Institute of Himalayan Ecology.
Yeah, I was part of that. I used to head Sustainable Development Division there.
Okay.
It's because of the children's education I shifted to Delhi. Otherwise, I was really happy to work there.
कितने मिनट है? 4 मिनट.
56.
स्पीकर ऑफ जो विजिटर्स हैं.
उनसे तो कोई मतलब नहीं. YouTube पे लाइव कर रहे हैं.
YouTube पे लाइव होगा ना. अच्छा इसमें जब वो बीच में आ जाएगा सारा तो ठीक रहेगा. वो पिन करता रहेगा ना वहाँ से जब फोटो
दिखते हैं लोग.
लोग चेहरा नहीं दिखाई देगा. लोग हमको देख रहे हैं. हमको चैट बॉक्स में क्वेश्चन.
यस सर.
हम उनको दिखाएंगे. उनके क्वेश्चन चैट बॉक्स पे वो नोट.
तो ऐसा है हमको भी चाहिए. हाँ कमरे में जो वो कि थोड़ा
एक लाइट और ऐसा सर एक कैमरे के लिए भी होना चाहिए हम लोगों को, क्योंकि ना कैमरे के लिए हम देखिए हमने अलग स्टैंड बनाया लाइट के लिए, सेम रहे ना तो आंखों में रिफ्लेक्शन आता है।
अरे इसको इसमें ना लगा के उसमें लगा दो ना इसको,
किसमें?
ये स्टैंड जो क्या बोलते हैं इसको, ब्यूरेट स्टैंड है ना, क्या स्टैंड है,
यूनिट स्टैंड तो है।
इसको खोल के उसमें कस दो ना
किसमें?
उस,
तो फिर रिफ्लेक्शन आता है ना लाइट का, सीधा कैमरा भी वही है, वो भी मेरा चश्मा लगाया ना, जिनके चश्मा नहीं है उनको ठीक है, पर जिनका चश्मा है ना उसमें रिफ्लेक्शन।
वैसे जैसे यहाँ कोड बना हुआ है इसका टाइप
ना वो कोड तो बना हुआ
पॉकेट बना हुआ
हमने हटा के
है।
अलग
हमने जानबूझ के लगा इसमें कैमरा फिट हुआ है।
लगा के खत्म करो ना, क्या परेशानी है, चश्मे में आता है तो चश्मा होता है।
ना, चलो रीडिंग और दूसरी चीजों में कुछ एक्चुअली आइज का बिल्कुल भी छोटा हो जाता है ना।
अभी 2 मिनट है, स्टार्ट कर दें।
हाँ,
कर देते हैं कोई
ओके यू पिन कर दो फिर ना, so we are starting.
Oh, sure. No. Sure.
Good afternoon students and welcome to National Science Centers. You know, from today onwards we have opened our museum for you again after lockdown period, and today on the occasion of World Science Day we have organized a special lecture for you on plant health and social well-being. So to inaugurate this special lecture, we have with us Shri N. Ramdas Iyer, our senior curator. I will request him for his welcome address.
A very good afternoon to all the viewers who are viewing this program and are waiting to listen to this lecture. So today, as my friend Mr. Malik said, is a special day because today is the World Science Day. It is also the International Day for Science Museums and Science Centers, and it is also the day when we have reopened National Science Center after about 6 months of being closed because of the COVID pandemic. And I take this opportunity to welcome you all back online here, and I also will look forward to seeing you all at the National Science Center to visit our galleries and exhibitions in the coming days. Now the topic of today is very interesting. It is about plant health, something which not many of you may have thought about very deeply. You see, much of the things that we get are from plants, directly or indirectly. And it is very important that the plants themselves remain healthy. We had last year inaugurated an exhibition here called Superbugs, the End of Antibiotics. It was an exhibition on whether antibiotics are becoming useless and cannot control infections anymore. Now, as a part of a solution to this major global health problem, WHO has declared a One Health policy. One Health policy is that we cannot be individually healthy. A person, I want to be healthy, I want all my colleagues, I don't care about them, they may be healthy, they may not be healthy, they may fall sick. Or all human beings will be healthy, but I don't care much about animals. Or all animals and human beings are healthy, I don't care much about plants. These approaches do not work anymore. And the policy of One Health, everything, everybody, even the environment should be healthy because we are all part of the whole. Plants get their nutrients from the soil and from the environment, water and other things. We consume plants, get their nutrients from them. Some animals consume plants, some people consume animals and get their nutrients from them. And then we pollute the environment. We create a lot of problems in the environment. In addition, each species among plants, among animals, even among us, have got enemies, have got parasites, have got pests, which prey on us all. And because of that, this one health goal becomes a problem. That is why we have invited a very reputed professor of botany today to talk to you about plant health. Incidentally, plant health is the topic. It is the topic chosen by the United Nations. The United Nations chooses a topic every year, a topic of great relevance. And this year it is plant health. And we'll also be making an exhibition on plant health very soon. We have a very eminent professor, Professor Kotapalli Srinivas Rao. I request my colleague, Mr. Kailash Chandra, to introduce the speaker of the day, after which we'll go directly to the lecture. Thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon, viewers, and thank you, sir, for giving me a chance to introduce the speaker of the day, Professor K.S. Rao, who is presently professor in Department of Botany, University of Delhi. He was born on 3rd July 1958, Guntur in Andhra Pradesh. He obtained his PhD in 1987. A few minutes before, we were talking about his interest. So he has traveled extensively in Himalayas during his field visits and collaborated with various several international scientists on various aspects of mountain developments. His present academic work related to natural resource management and sustainable development in Himalayas and biodiversity assessment on critical ecosystems in hill and mountain regions. This is where his academic research lies. And so far, because is a very senior post, and he has already supervised 18 PhD students, written 25 books on different topics related to botany, and he has also, to his credit, 150 research papers, which he has presented at various platforms. So he has been awarded Vishisht Vaigyanik Puruskar in 2005 by Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India. He is UGC National Swami Parmanand Saraswati Award he has got for Ecology and Environment also in 2006. And also Professor Nam Enrollment Lecture Award in 2016 by Madurai Kamaraj University, Madurai. So he is currently Fellow of National Institute of Ecology, International Society for Plant Morphologists, Andhra Pradesh Academy for Sciences, Linnean Society of London, and Indian Botanical Society. So we are privileged that we have such a, highly knowledgeable person as a speaker of the day, and he will be speaking on the topic plant health and social well-being. And this relates to the International Year of Plant Health 2020. So over to Professor K.S. Rao sir. Over to you, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. So let me start my presentation. I hope you are able to see my presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I have chosen this topic, plant health and social well-being, because the social well-being is ultimately what we are looking forward. So the plant health is what we are today interested in. So let us go ahead. So today it is a very important day for us. It's World Science Day for Peace and Development 2020, and we are actually looking forward for this day in terms of the strengthening the public awareness of the role of science for peaceful and sustainable societies, and thus to reduce the drudgery that the entire world where the resource anything. Hello, is it okay?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So, to promote the national and international solidarity for shared science between the countries, and they renew national and international commitment for the use of science for the benefit of the society, and lastly, draw attention to the challenges faced by the science in raising support for the scientific endeavor. And it is important to understand that a lot of problems that the human society currently is facing could be resolved by the science and its development. The United Nations General Assembly has identified this year as an important part of the plant health for the society. And thus, it is important for us to understand why this topic was chosen. And we also have to know what this plant health actually means. So, if you look at the year is once in a lifetime opportunity to raise global awareness on how promoting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and boost economic development. If you look carefully these things, so the most critical one is the world is facing a lot of problem in terms of the food insufficiency in some places and excessive production at other places, and how we could achieve the equity and reduce this hunger is also going to be one of the important agenda at the international level. And we need to look at the reduced poverty. Every country is trying to look at how to reduce poverty, and natural resources is the only way we could actually produce the resources that are required for providing economic opportunity. And in a country like India, a lot of people are dependent on agriculture, and this natural resource production itself is going to meet most of the people's requirements in terms of the both resources and also their economic development. And thus, the plants are going to be an important component in terms of how we manage the resources. So, what this plant health and why it is important? So, a healthy plant is able to grow and produce and can face the environmental stress, pests, and competition. So, similar to us human beings, a healthy person could face the stresses, pests, and competition. The plants also can do the same thing. And thus, it is important to understand what plant health means. The food and the natural resources supplies are always coming from the plant sources for a predominant part. So some people might be dependent on animal resources for their food requirement, but without the plant resources, these animal resources can also vanish. And thus, the plant products are going to be the most critical in terms of providing the energy, in terms of the food, and also resources that are required for the society to progress. A range of variables affect the plant health, including the surrounding environment and the extent to which they are protected from the pests and diseases. So, it is important to also understand the environmental parameters which are influencing the health of the plant. Similar to the human beings, plants also interact with the environment. In winter, we feel chilly. In summer, we feel heat. And when we feel thirsty, water is not available sufficiently in the body. So, plants also face similar issues. And thus, the environment plays an important part in terms of the ability of the plant to be healthy or vulnerable to the pests. And thus, environment plays an important role in terms of the how plants maintain its own health and thus able to provide the resources. The healthy plants are vital for to sustainable and profitable crop production and to qualify mm, quality and cost of the nation's supply of food, fuel, and fiber. Health is also critical to plants used for ornamentals, natural resources, and animal feed. Scientists are using innovative methods to breed more productive and nutritious crops. Advances in breeding and genetics are allowing farmers to grow plant varieties that are healthier and more resilient to drought and losses from the pests and diseases. So, a lot of students might have heard that genetically modified crops are coming, and especially today in India, we have a lot of discussion whether we should allow them or not. A lot of developed countries already using this genetically modified food crops to meet their requirements both in terms of the food and industrial requirements. In India currently we are allowing only the cotton, which is a non-food item. Otherwise we are not yet fully geared up in terms of accepting the genetically modified food, and thus we are already in looking in terms of how the naturally available variants of the agriculture crops are able to meet the requirements of the food that is required for the growing populations of our country. As I said, the United Nations has declared this year as the International Year of Plant Health, and we should look at what the objectives of this program. So, this year is declared with the objective that raising the awareness of public and political decision makers on global, regional, and national levels about plant health and its contribution to these three factors, and to promoting a strengthening of global, regional, national plant health efforts in light of increasing trade and new pest risks caused through climate change. And this is one thing one has to keep in mind, because lot of places this climate change impact is clearly visible, and especially that developing countries is facing a lot of issues in terms of meeting their requirements in terms of food and fodder due to the changes induced by the climate change. Rallying global, regional, national political support for plant health, and this is going to be important. If you look at the published work, you understand that a lot of countries take lot of precautions in terms of regulating the products that are coming from the other regions, because the pests that are going to come to their countries could wipe out the entire crop production in those regions, and thus the countries take extreme care in terms of how to manage these things. So, increasing global, regional, and national resources for plant health policies and systems is the fourth objective that was set for the International Year of Plant Health. So, now let us come to our main topic, that is how the plant health is related to the human well being. To understand that, we have to first understand how the human well being is and how it is measured. The human well being is the society, which I said, humans in terms of me is we are talking looking at the society, anthropogenic society, and thus human well-being is a broad concept, one that includes many aspects of our everyday lives. It encompasses material well-being, relationships with family and friends, and emotional and physical health. It includes work and recreation, how one feels about one's community and personal safety. So you may ask how all these things are related to the plants. A psychometric study that has been conducted in US has shown that young children who were exposed to lot of greenery has more mental peace and well-rounded development as compared to those students who has been constantly into the build-up environments like concrete jungles, and they were always had problems in terms of understanding their lessons and all, and lot of psychological issues. And this shows that the plants has ability to keep the human brain into a stable state and thus provide soothing environment for the people to keep focused in terms of acquiring knowledge and thus have a capacity building effect in terms of the human development. And thus greenery and surrounding is going to be critical. It is also said when you are doing physical exercise, if your surroundings are green, you have better effects as compared to the those people who are working more in terms of the built environments, indoors under the air conditions in the gyms. So open air physical exercise is considered to be the most important part in terms of the physical exercise for the students and those people who are growing. The Commission on Measurement of Economic Performance and Social Progress identified 8 key dimensions that should be taken into account when defining human well-being. So these are the 8. Of these, today we are focusing on the health and the environment, which is influencing the health. This health could be both the human health and also the plant health. And today we are going to focus more on the plant health. The measuring human well-being requires the subjective act of defining and creating models and measurements of that which defines health and quality of life. And this we will not discuss too much because it is going beyond the our scope of current today's lecture. To understand why we have so much of diversity, we have to understand how this earth has evolved. So if you look at these pictures, you could see that in the Precambrian period, about 650 million years ago, there is a big ocean within which a small land mass that has developed, which is Gondwana land, and then it has grown and slowly in the early Cambrian Carboniferous period, about 365 million years from today back, it has started moving towards the northern pole from this existing southern pole area. And by the upper Jurassic period, about 150 million years, the continental plates, as we are seeing today, started breaking up. And today, about end of Cretaceous period, about 65 million years ago, before the humans are stepped in terms of the evolution, has this continental systems has formed, which we are looking at today as the various countries organized in the different countries. And the green areas that you are seeing is predominantly vegetation rich zones that are having the diversity, and this vegetation the evolutionary period has changed from the unicellular organisms to the multicellular big plants that has been harvesting the greenhouse gases and thus able to help the humans to have better life on this earth. So to understand this, we have to look at what are the plant systems that are existed. And in the plant kingdom, we call the distribution of the plant wealth in various agroclimatic systems as the biomes. The map shows the major geographic regions defined on the basis of dominant plant growth forms. So you will be seeing that the as you move both towards the polar regions, you have the cold adapted plant varieties dominating the ones. So the conifer plants, and thus you have the polar region plants, then the temperate region plants, and as you move towards the equator, you'll find the tropical and equatorial plant varieties that are dominating. And the tropics are rich in terms of the biodiversity because it has a lot of environmental variables that are resulting in evolutionary changes and thus the greater speciation that is occurring, and thus you have lot many varieties of the plants that has originated and accumulated in the region. And why we need all these variations in terms of the plants that are supporting the providing the resources for the human society. So let us look at these two maps. A and B. Which one is healthy and which one is unhealthy? So you might think that there are lot many plants and thus this could be healthy, and few plants here it is unhealthy, or otherwise you say these plants are more thicker so it could be healthy, and these are the thinner plants, they are unhealthy. From a different perspective you could say some are healthy, some are unhealthy. Here these are old plants and thus still continuing to grow, and thus you could consider them healthy. The densities are lower here, and thus the resources availability is sufficient for the plants to sustain. Here, the plants are young and they are more dense, and there is a resource competition, and thus they might be under stress and could be considered as the unhealthy for the time being. But you require to have high densities also to get by the old days into a healthy forest which could support the carbon sequestration and thus able to provide the services that are required for the human society. So to understand the what are the signs of the plant health, let us look at. So here in the pictures you have the healthy and unhealthy plants, and in terms of the ability to absorb the sunlight, you have the amount of the light that is being reflected back is also given here. So in general layman terms we can say the leaves are dark green in color for a healthy plant. It has good flowering if it is in the flowering stage. There are no signs of pests or diseases apparently visible from the observation by our naked eye. So, what is the unhealthy plant then? So, an unhealthy plant will be looking like wilting. There could be pest damaged plant parts that are visible, and the growth could be poor. So some of the pictures in both the slides, you could see that the pests are creating lot of damage to the plants. So you could see a classification of the pests that are doing damage to the plant given into this map. And we will come to this at a later stage. To understand the utility of the plants and its health, you could look at the diversity of the plants that are available in India. You could see a predominant part of them are going to be critical in terms of what has been already identified and what has not been identified. And a macro organisms that are clearly visible to the naked eye are the ones easy to identify. So scientific knowledge has accumulated in terms of identifying a lot of plants. And in terms of the viruses, bacteria, fungi, these plants, a lot of those which could be easily cultured has been easily identified. Those that cannot be cultured by the humans, it is difficult to identify, but some efforts has been done using the genetic markers, some identifications of them, and it is estimated that while we are able to identify about 85% of the macro diversity, we were able to document and identify only about 20-25% of the micro diversity of the viruses, bacteria, fungi, and other organisms. And thus, lot of these organisms is still has to be identified, documented. Only then we will be knowing whether they are really useful or creating harm to our society, both either directly causing diseases to the humans or could be indirectly by causing diseases to the plants and animals which are providing the resources to our society. So here let us take a look at some of the interesting plants. We already know that ginger provides us good health. Turmeric is an important plant. Similarly, a lot of condiments are available in our cooking systems. There is a lot of diversity in the tomatoes that we consume across the world. The size variation, the color variation could be seen. our most precious resource, the banyan tree, you know, tulsi, the osimum, the moringa, the drumstick. And I would like to emphasize here this is not really identified as a major resource in India, but this is a lifeline resource in African subcontinent. It is rich with the vitamins, minerals, and is consumed a lot. The leaf, the flowers, and the fruit all are consumed in large quantities. And today, a lot of people are looking at exploring the possibility of establishing this as an industrial by exporting the dried powder of moringa leaves to the Africa as one of the important business. And you might be interested to know this insect trap plant, Nepenthes. And in the coastal regions, you will see a lot of plants, rhizophora, that are interesting in terms of the protecting the coastlines from the cyclones that are coming and damaging our land masses. And flowers are important, but this flower is important in terms of reducing the pests in agriculture fields, and thus the tagetes has an important role in terms of reducing the pests. And here you could see the major crop plants, rice, wheat, and the corn that are providing the food for the human society across the world. These are the three main grains that are meeting the more than 85% of the food resources that are required for the world human population today. I also would like the students to understand some of the interesting plants. This is Wolfia globosa, the smallest angiosperm, which is a flowering plant. So this is an aquatic plant, and it is so small that it can pick up several hundreds on your fingertip. And a lot of work is happening on this plant to understand how this single cell plant is able to produce the food resources that are required and thus able to have a lot of nutrients that are accumulated and could be considered as a superfood for the future. And in terms of its uses at present, we know that at least in Thailand, lot of people use this, and it is considered to be very important food for them. And in the Thai cuisine, in especially Isan making, people use this as the important ingredient. The other plant I would like to give you an introduction is the dwarf mistletoe. And this is another very small plant, and that has been creating a lot of damage to the big forests that are existing in the across the world. This in example I have picked up is the Himalayan one, but you have similar concentric species across the world which occurs as the endophytic plant inside the phloem, and only when it has to reproduce it starts producing small green parts that are bulging out of the bark and thus completes its reproduction. And the propagules that has been the seeds produced are transported by both the insects and the wind and start establishing themselves, and they could stay for a few years internally without even reproducing and could damage the entire plant. So the plants get weakened by infection of this minute dwarf mistletoe, and lot of forests, specifically the coniferous forests, have this as a major problem. The other mistletoes has been infecting the broad-leaved forests also, but these minute mistletoes are a interesting angiosperm that people are trying to look at, and what are the genetic markup of this plant which is enabling it to stay as endoparasite for a prolonged period of its life cycle and then appear as for reproduction outside the plant and complete it. And when you ask which is the most useful plant, in Southeast Asia, people simply say bamboo is the most useful plant. Why? It is said to be from cradle to the coffin. This plant is used in most of the regions, and it is also considered to be most important food item in the entire Southeast Asian region. And in northeastern region, this plant is providing a lot of employment in terms of both as a food and also as industrial resource. And you could see this entire Buddha is prepared by the bamboo by weavers. And in terms of this providing the medicinal value, in terms of providing construction material, in terms of providing food, is considered to be the most important resource. And in northeastern region, lot of pulp production for the paper industry is dependent on bamboo, and thus the best paper is considered to be produced by the bamboo pulp. And today, if we are looking at the resources, India is having a lot of diversity of this plant, and management of this resource is going to be very, very critical for us. A lot of plants are underutilized in the region, and our food basket is going to be enriched if we properly understand all these plants. You might have seen this jungli jalebi and other plants which are used as the eatables for the children when we are going at the school, and the vegetable diversity that you have seen, and all these things are getting attention, and thus we have a lot of diversity which need to be protected from the pests and pathogens to support the social well-being of the region. And this is the period lot of us enjoy eating this fruit. And in the summers, we use this coffle or myrica and nilambo. And all these resources are going to be critical in terms of supporting the food diversity that India has. If you look at the number of species and genera that are supporting the food requirements under various categories of the fruits, vegetables, nuts, and industrial crops, pseudo cereals, and grain legumes, you could see the diversity is very high in terms of the fruits and the vegetables. The grain legumes, as you know, we use three major main grains, and then the cereals, pseudo cereals are the other ones which the predominant population are using. Why we should be worried about the plants? The plants provide all the resources, and thus they provide a lot of ecosystem services. This is well. But what one has to see is we also have this therapeutic potential value. So we don't know yet for some of the plants what the real contribution of these plants. And thus, it is important to protect these plants for future possible discoverable uses to the human society. Lot of new medicines are rediscovered. It is not, we don't want to say that they are going to be discovered. They might be already known to our traditional medicine system. But in terms of what is the active ingredient, how to resynthesize them in the laboratories and provide better cure to the people is going to be discovered, and thus it is going to be important for us to understand why these plants produce these resources and what these plants are going to be useful in terms of the future for the human society is going to be critical for us to understand. So, why the plant health is important? Plant health is important because plants also have the pests. So, what is a plant pest? The term plant pest means any living stage of any of the following that can directly or indirectly injure, cause damage to, or cause disease in any plant or plant product. So it could be a protozoan, a non-human animal. Why we have put non-human is humans are also a pest on the plants because they acquire their food from the plants itself. But for the human point of view, all animals which are non-human animals are considered to be the pests because they are taking away the benefits that are required for the human society. A parasitic plant, a bacterium, a fungus, a virus or viroid, an infectious agent or other pathogen that could be identified. So now let us take some snapshots at the pathogens that we know. So the phloem necrosis is happening in the coffee plants because of the protozoans. And what are these protozoans? The protozoans are the ones like the amoeba, paramecium like structures, and these could be infecting the plant. The phloem resources that are transferred the photosynthetic to the various parts of the plant is being consumed or obstructed by the protozoans is actually causing the necrosis, and the necrosis is like it is disintegration of the tissues, and thus you will not be able to have the functional ability of the plant, and this is a major cause of the loss of the coffee production in India and across the world. So the protozoans are causing major economic damage. The other organisms like the fungi, bacteria, nematodes, and viruses, let us look at what they are doing. So the example of the fungal disease signs are rust, leaf rust, stem rust, and white molds and powdery mildews. So you could see the leaf rust. It is happening on the predominantly the granaceous plants and in the stem rust also. Then sclerotina is going to have the white mold. So you will find a lot of wild, sticky like fungal strains coming out, and then the powdery mildew, which is predominantly affecting a lot of leguminous crops, is going to reduce the crop yields, and thus the fungal organisms act as the pathogens could cause diseases to the plants and thus a major problem to the plant health. Bacteria also act as a major source of the diseases. You could see the bacterial infected fruits and the stems started showing the streaming the water. So you have the plant pathogens which are causing such diseases. They like the crown gall, the fruit spots, leaf spots, or the cankers on the lemons, etc. Actually, and thus is reducing the photosynthetic efficiency of the plants, and thus the plants are not able to perform optimally, and thus plants are unhealthy. Nematodes eat away the root systems and thus are damaging the plant health, and these microscopic animals actually is causing major agriculture damage in the regions wherever they are. And in the plantation crops, these are considered to be a major source of yield losses because in the nurseries, wherever the nematode infection is already existing, it could be transported to the other places where the plant material is transported and spreads its acreage and thus could be damaging. And especially in the plantation crops, nematodes are considered to be a major problem, especially in terms of the banana, cashew, and other plantation crops. The phytoplasma is the one which is a lot of interesting organism. It is something like a mycoplasma-like organism, which is unculturable. It is phloem-limited insect-transmitted plant pathogen, and it has a structure different from the bacteria, which could be said that it doesn't have a rigid cell wall, and it causes a disease that we call as the phyllodes, and phyllodes means it's just like a witch's broom. So it gives a cancerous growth of plant material, and thus you will find that the growth is not uniform and it is not a healthy growth. And insects also plays important role in terms of the as the plant pests and could be hampering the plant health. You might feel that a lot of these are butterflies, moths. They are really interesting plants, but as adults they may not be doing much damage. But as a juveniles, they are all eating away the leaf and thus reducing the photosynthetic ability of the plant and thus damaging the plant health. You have flies, you have other organisms, and these are acting as the herbivores on the important plants for the human society and thus reducing the plant health and thus creating problems to the human well-being. Two of the important pests agriculturally considered to be across the world. This is the white grub. In Himalayan region, it is very, very common. It is called kurmula in Uttarakhand region. And white fly is the other one, which is a major pest across the world. And in Africa, it is considered to be a devastating pest, especially for the major crops that are growing. These are the two major pests that are considered to be most damaging to the world population's food requirements and considered to be important pests like other major pests. Let us look at why we should be worried about these pests or pathogens. In terms of the major food supplier, that the wheat, rice, and maize that are meeting the world's largest population's food requirements, you could see the Southeast Asian, South and East Asian region where India is a major contributor, has about 10% of production loss in the wheat, about 59% of the losses in the rice, and about 7% in the maize. So, if you consider this rice and wheat as a major crops of India, which are meeting the food requirements, about 60% and 10% of grain losses, yield losses, is going to be a predominant loss for the growing populations in our country. You could see that our yields are pretty low. It is less than 2 tons per hectare in terms of the wheat, in terms of the rice, it is just above the 2 tons per hectare, and in the maize, we don't have much of the contribution, so let us not concentrate there. So you could consider if with the low yields as compared to the other developed countries in terms of the wheat and the rice, you have a predominant part of the loss. Then we are actually losing more than 50% of the rice yields because of the pests and the pathogens. And if we don't do proper care, we could be actually keeping 50% of our population under hunger because we have lost the yield that could actually meet their food requirements. And thus, understanding the plant health and how to maintain it is going to be critical for the human well being or the social well being for the society like us. So, plant diseases are also spreading across the world very quickly, and this is because of the plant material is moved. We have been importing a lot of planting material from various countries because of our industrial requirements. Let us look at some of the important diseases that has been considered to be spreading recently. See, white pine blister rust, chestnut blight, Dutch elm disease, dogwood anthracene, pith cranker, port or ford cedar root disease, sudden oak death. Sudden oak death is a major death that is reported in the European and American continent, and also in the Himalayan region. You'll find a lot of this has created problems. In terms of insects, the Asian gypsy moth has spread across the Europe and the Americas. The Asian longhorn beetle also has spread along. Citrus longhorn beetle, emerald ash borer, and Cyrex nicotina and other Coleoptera insects. So the coleopterans are considered to be the major insects that are spreading across the continents and has causing lot of damage to the plant health and thus creating lot of issues. How does these diseases are spreading? These diseases are spreading because of the disease triangle. There is susceptible host, there is a pathogen which is virulent, and then there is a favorable environment. So when you have all the three together, then the intensity of the disease is very high. So when you have only susceptible host but not the pathogen and the favorable environment, the disease incidence is not existing or very, very low. When susceptible host is not available, pathogen cannot act as the disease causing organism, and thus there is a possibility of no disease. And when the environment is not favorable, the disease incidence is going to be extremely low even when the susceptible host and the pathogen is available. And thus this availability of the all the three factors are going to be critical in terms of the disease triangle, and the spread of the diseases is happening because we are increasingly providing favorable environment by altering the environmental conditions in which we are growing the plants. The pathogens are freely moving because we are moving the growing organisms freely, and thus we are providing the susceptible host, and thus we are completing the disease triangle, and thus expanding the plant health problems across the globe because we are concerned with the our economic development, and in the pursuit of economic development we are also increasing the risk for the plant health. How do we assess the plant health problems? Especially we take a example of the pest risk assessment flowchart. If we look at in the initial stages, we look at the pests, the pathway, the policies that are existing in each of the countries or the regions where these organisms are currently going to have an impact on the agriculture production or the economic crop production, and then by looking at the published information, we look at whether we should consider that as the important problem or not. Then, once we identify this, it is going to be important problem creating large scale yield losses. Then we start looking for the pest risk assessment. We categorize the pests into various categories and then look at the what is the economic losses it is going to cause, and then if the risk is not acceptable in terms of the amount of the losses that it is going to create, then we go to the pest risk management. And then here we have to look at the various options. There is biological management, there is integrated pest management opportunities. Then we also have to go for a lot of pesticide treatments, which is also adding to our problems to the human society in terms of the contamination and environmental pollution. And thus, we have to be very careful in terms of identifying the pest risk very early so as we could take proper precautions and thus could reduce the further steps in terms of the reducing the chemical pollutants that we need to use to reduce the pests and thus help the plant health. So, what are the institutional support we have in terms of the plant health management? So, we have under the Government of India, Ministry of Agriculture is the nodal organization that is looking after the plant health management. The Department of Agriculture and Cooperation is the organization vested with the powers, and the Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage, which is headquartered at Faridabad, is the one which is looking after these, and it is looking through its various stations and the organizations that are under it to restrict the spread of the diseases and thus able to maintain the plant health management facilities that are required for the better management of plant health in our country. I would like you to see a small video which has you can identify this pest that has been coming from the western region and reached up to the Delhi and considered to be created havoc in the Gujarat, Haryana, Maharashtra,
Locust.
and Rajasthan. So, in local language, we call it as the Tidde, and this Tiddes has a very short generation period, and they have been causing a major havoc periodically. So every 4 or 5 years, these populations suddenly grow to that level and causes extensive crop damage, not only in the agriculture fields, any plant material that is available across anywhere is totally eaten away. If a Tidal swarm settles down at a given area, all greenery material is eaten away in less than a few hours, and thus it is going to be a major problem. And this year, which we had a major problem of COVID, also has a 2 days coming from the western region and creating a lot of damage to our agriculture systems in the region. So at the international level, who regulates the movement of the plant and plant pests? So internationally, we have International Plant Protection Convention. Under this agreement, the countries that have signed this convention takes care of the protocols that are required to move the plant products from one region to the other region. At the regional level, in our region, the International Plant Protection Convention regional organizations, the our region has Asia Pacific Plant Protection Commission, which looks after the movement of these plants and plant products along with the pest and disease causing organisms. In our country, the Directorate of the Plant Protection and Quarantine and Storage is the organization that is looking after the requirements. In the state level, the state departments of agriculture and products across borders, even when you order from the online sources. And if you remember, recently there were a lot of news that unsolicited plant seeds has been sent to various people across the globe. And if we unknowingly use those seeds, could have been initiated lot of diseases, so which we don't know. And thus one has to be very careful in terms of getting the propagules from unknown sources. We should have proper clearances, and thus it is important for us to respect the regulations and take care that we don't introduce any pathogens or pests that could damage the plant health and thus could create major problems to our human well-being. We have to be careful when taking plants and plant products with us when we travel. There may be spread plant pests and diseases. Several countries take strong penal action on persons infringing plant health laws existing in their country, especially Australia and New Zealand. They are very, very fuzzy now. They don't allow you without cleaning your shoes to enter their country when you land at their airport or the seaport. It is thoroughly cleaned and only then they will allow because they consider the foot and mouth disease with a major cause of wiping out their dairy industry and animal protein production facilities because they are major animal husbandry countries and dust coming along with the shoes are considered to be a possible pathway through which that could travel from one country to the other countries. Be cautious when ordering plants and plant products online or through postal services, as small packages can easily bypass regular phytosanitary controls. It is mandatory to seek prior clearances to get such products for both consumptive and non consumptive uses. And we have to seek, seek the plant quarantine certificate for getting these things. And if you look at export and import business today, all plant products actually goes through these quarantine regulations, and only then the products could be actually exported and imported. And you might have heard that mangoes, which are a major product that are exported from our country, were not able to get export permit this year because there has a lot of quarantine issues with it. And similarly, we will be looking at in terms of the things that are we are importing from various countries, how they could be introducing new pests to our region. Spread the word about plant health on social media and in your community throughout the 2020 and beyond, so as you contribute by your own efforts to protect the plant health and thus able to provide well-being to our society. And thank you for your attention. I also thank the National Science Center Delhi for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all.
Camera. Thank you very much, sir, for such a enlightening lectures. Really, it was very nice to listen to this wonderful talk. Even I think people have some questions. I will request all the audience who are listening, seeing this lecture through YouTube, may post their question on chat box so that we can ask Professor Rao to answer them. Meanwhile, I would like to introduce Professor Rao to one of our colleagues. She is actually your student.
Hello, sir.
So
Yeah.
she suggested your name for the lectures only. So Yeah. Professor Rao,
Yeah,
actually,
any questions?
yeah, my
Yeah,
question
go ahead.
is the way actually we are emphasizing on quantity to produce crops, how much quality is reduced? Are we doing some research in this field? We may have
See,
good,
when we are talking about agriculture production, at least,
yeah,
both quantity and quality both are taken care because the varieties that are released are specific to specific agroclimatic zone. This means that we are releasing a quality variety that are suited to specific agroecological zone, and thus we are able to provide quantity also.
no, for example, actually now there are two types of tomatoes in the market. Yeah,
Okay,
one is we
the
call
desi
them
and the
Desi and
hybrids
English.
you are talking
And
about.
you see that everyone wants to have a Desi tomato more, although they are also selling the other tomatoes. But the people want Desi tomato still. They means the bitterness or the other taste you find only in one type of tomatoes. So,
See, here is the trade-off. See, when you want to increase the production, you will be losing some of the important traits of the plant. So, by
yes.
increasing the fruit yield, you will be reducing the plant's ability to invest in terms of producing some of the secondary metabolites. So, what happening is they see variety, which is good in terms of giving that tinginess, is not having good shelf life. To increase the shelf life and the increase in the product, the genetic breeders has done a breeding strategy through which they were able to introduce the characteristic, the traits that are required for increasing the shelf life, and the yield has been introduced into it. And thus you are having the hybrids which
Question
has longer shelf life and better
another
yield.
question. Okay. One more thing which I would like to know from you. A lot of pesticide and fertilizers are used for productions. So urea mainly. They said that urea has, which we are using for increasing production, has impact on human also. Is there some study which says all these things are just myths popular among us?
See, the urea is a nitrogenous fertilizer.
Yeah.
It's can contaminate the groundwater. So, in the places where the human society is predominantly dependent on groundwater for their domestic needs, like the drinking water, could have some health effects because excessive nitrogen in human bloodstream could cause the blue death disease. So, you have this problem. But predominantly, urea is volatilized, and thus you have the less problems. So, increased use of urea, if the environmental conditions are not favorable, could lead to pollution. But when the conditions are good, the plant uptake is so fast, I don't really see that it is. It is basically the problem is the farmers are using the urea in a proper dosage at the proper time or not.
Sir, one Tabassum Rocky has put a question in chat box. How can large scale organic production can be improved without using any chemical fertilizer?
You see, we
It's an easy
cannot
question.
meet the entire food requirements of the growing populations only through organic production. Okay, so there is limitation certainly, but at the same time, you could have chemical agriculture in those areas where environmental conditions are conducive, so as you could have the maximum production. And in the regions where environmental conditions are not conducive, you could still continue to have the organic agriculture. The major part, like the Western Ghats, Himalayan region, are still considered to be predominantly organic states. And if you look at the government policies also, Sikkim has declared itself as the organic state, Uttarakhand has declared itself as the organic state, and predominant hill agriculture is still organic. because the amount of the fertilizers and other pesticides are used in very limited quantity in such areas. And thus, we have to have a trade-off between the industrial agriculture versus organic agriculture. You should look at meeting the food requirements of the growing populations and also has to balance it out with the environmental conditions in which the organic agriculture could be expanded.
Sir, there is one more question. Is there any mosquito repellent plants?
Artemisia is considered to be one of the important. So in natural systems, you use it as a dupe plant. You could artemisinin is also extracted as the medicine also now for the malarial diseases, and in biological control agent, the tacitus oil, which is extracted, is used to control the malarial mosquito larvae.
So can you guide this, because most of our will be students, what career prospects they can have in this field?
See, plant sciences itself is the major backbone for the life. So if we could understand properly the functional activities of the plants, there is a lot of possibility. Currently, if we are looking in terms of the microbiology, we have so much of industrial opportunities in terms of industrial microbiology. Entire medicinal production from the biological sources is totally dependent on our understanding of the microbes. All industries are dependent on microbial or plant produced sucroses or the starches or sugars or the enzymes. So we could look in terms of the people opting for job-oriented courses where they get trained. So if you look at most of the genetic engineering areas that people are working, they are looking in terms of producing those novel enzymes or novel chemical compounds from the plants or the microbes, so as you could provide better economic opportunities to the society by knowing the plants or the microbes that could produce these important economic resources. And thus, the student should understand in each region what is the variation that is existing. A simple example, we all consider the neem plant as the taken granted. But look at neem starts flowering very early in the South India. By the time it starts flowering in the North India, the fruiting is already over in the South India. But if you look at the yield quality of the oil, it is greater in South India as compared to the North India. In North India, almost oil yield is negligible. Why? The abiotic conditions, the dryness that is required is not going to come during the critical period that is required. So it is important to understand what are the characteristics of environmental parameters that are required for the plant to have these secondary metabolites so as we can have a better production. Israel is progressing in such a way in entire desert conditions without much of water availability. They are able to produce all the food requirements, all the industrial resource requirements in their country within the protected agriculture they are having, and also able to export resources. That is the important thing one has to learn. So if we can understand how to produce plants in protected conditions, we will be able to provide with limited land and water resources the food requirements or the industrial product requirements for the future generations. So thus students could understand these requirements easily from their education.
Sir, one last question. Actually, recently, locals problem, टिड्डी दल जो आया था, तो people started beating drums and thalis and other things. Does this really helps?
See, it is just trying to scare away the animal.
Acha.
So the human strategy you might have seen from the beginning of agriculture, the humans try to scare away the pests. So always they used to have a machan and then staying there, putting the drums or sound making the things or light reflecting things. And in the worst scenario, they used to have fire in the agriculture field, so as the insects that are attracted to fire used to come and they eat all the herbaceous. And thus, our strategies of making sounds and doing this thing is simply you are getting them move away.
What out karo?
Yeah,
We had lost the
yeah, I'm back.
connection.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, okay, sir. So I think we have a very wonderful session today. Thanks a lot, Professor K.S. Rao sir. Indeed, we are all benefited with your this lecture. And since our museum has opened now, we would like to have one more lecture from you live in our auditorium. And as the schools start open, we'll plan for a live lecture again at our center. Thank you very much for
Maybe
sparing.
I think that for the students, the diversity, plant diversity is going to be more interesting. So we could show them with a lot of pictures the diversity of our country.
Yes.
Probably we could organize it whenever it's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time, sir. So nice.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our viewers also on YouTube. Okay, so
Okay.
keep on visiting our website. We will be coming with more and more program like this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.